Hello and welcome to another episode of the Family Gamers Podcast. This is episode 398.
Hello, everybody. We are super excited to be here and bring you part one of a two-part series. That's what it's going to be.
Yes.
Tonight. Who are we? We are the Family Gamers. As always, I'm your host, Andrew, and I am joined by my lovely and wonderful wife, Anitra.
That's me.
And I mentioned two parts. We are going to talk about, this is another Room to Grow. This is going to be Room to Grow Abstract Games Part 1.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that, Anitra?
Classic abstract games.
This is going to be classic abstract games. So stuff that we pretty much guarantee you've heard of. But that's okay because I think, as we were talking about this earlier, I think the goal here is to really reframe the way that we encourage people to think about classic games.
Yeah, we talk about newer, modern games all the time on the podcast. But I bet you played checkers or chess or both with relatives when you were a kid.
Or many other classic games like Sorry or Chutes and Ladders or whatever. Those kinds of things.
Backgammon. Yeah.
All those games that Anitra loves.
We think these games are great, and we probably don't talk about them enough. And so we wanted to do a Room to Grow focused on one small subset of those kinds of games. We
think some of those games are great. And we're going to talk about some of those games later on. But first, we have the first half of the show to do. I have a fact for 398. Are you ready, Anitra?
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, we don't talk about libraries all that much, but we do love libraries. We're big library fans.
Libraries.
Yes. You have saved our family a lot of money by going to the library. Well, it turns out that a capital L librarian is actually a formal thing. You can literally get a degree in it, like a Master of Library and Information Science degree, which is an MLS degree.
Oh, yeah, an MLS degree.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's not the fact, but this fact is a fact for all of the librarians out there. Do you think that librarians have to commit like all of the filing systems to memory and like what all the different numbers and decimals and all that crazy stuff? Like, do you think they have to memorize all those things?
I don't think they need every detail, but I do think they should probably know the broad strokes of the filing system that their library uses, and maybe the broad strokes of, other common filing systems as well.
Well, I mean, what do you think the most well-known filing system in the world is?
I mean, I feel like it's the Dewey Decimal System.
Right, probably. It probably is. So that's one of the big ones. The other big one is the Library of Congress filing system.
Yeah, I don't understand that one quite as well.
Well, I guess it's more specific, so a lot of libraries are switching to it.
Sure.
But whatever. Anyway, what I didn't know is the Dewey Decimal System is actually an international standard. It's not just an American standard. But anyway, the fact for this week is that 398 in the Dewey Decimal System has an interesting subject. Do you happen to know what it is?
I don't.
Okay. It is folklore. All folklore. So specifically 398.2 is fairy tales, which a lot of people, like there's that you can get like t-shirts with like, I remember 398.2 or I'm a big fan of 398 or whatever. But just in general, 398 is all folklore, whether it's fairy tales or, maybe it's the folklore from your country or whatever it might be.
Okay. I did a quick lookup of this. So this would also include things like Aesop's Fables.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Okay, sure.
So anyway, so that's it. Dewey Decimal System 398 is folklore.
Cool. We also have a message from our sponsor. Andrew, have you heard of the fun ratio?
Not until I heard this fact on a previous episode.
The fun ratio is a tool parents can use to help their kids make decisions around buying their wants. The things they don't need, like toys and games and things like that. The fun ratio is just the number of hours of fun per dollar spent. So that flashy, expensive toy that doesn't get played with more than once, like a drone that breaks the first time you use it or something like that, that has a pretty low
never
fun ratio.
In our family before.
Quiet. That has a pretty low fun ratio. But a game like Trio, which is about $15, provides hours of fun for not a whole lot of money. The point of talking about this isn't to encourage your kids to be cheap, but to help them compare options and think about how their money is enjoyed. This isn't always the best way to make decisions about money, but it can be a helpful framework. Having conversations like thinking about the fun ratio can help your kids understand how to get the best use out of their money and establish great habits for their future. This idea comes from The Opposite of Spoiled by Ron Leeper. If you want to talk about other ways to equip your children for their future, go to firstmovefinancial.com/familygamers and schedule a time to talk to First Move today for free.
All right, thanks so much to the team at First Move Financial for sponsoring another episode of the Family Gamers podcast. So, Anitra, we've been playing some games. We have some new games that we have been playing recently that we should talk about.
We should.
Yeah. Not a new game, but it's been a little while since we pulled out Azul, and we actually pulled it out during one of our game nights and had a pretty good game of Azul in which you beat us. But if I remember correctly... Oh, never mind. You beat us by a lot, but the rest of us had close scores.
The rest of you were all close. That was a good game. I managed to get, I think, like 3 columns or something ridiculous like that, which did push me quite far into the lead.
Mm-hmm.
We've also been playing some more Trio and some Flip 7. We'll be talking about that in the review in the break in the show.
Yeah, we have been playing some more Disney Lorcana, which is the review for this week.
I dug through my Button Shy games and finally learned how to play Food Chain Island, which is a solo game. This is another one of the, I think it's called the Simply Solo line from Button Shy. It is exactly what it sounds like. It's not a super challenging game. This is probably best suited for like middle schoolers, but for me, it is really enjoyable to have a, 10-minute game that's not going to make me think too hard, but is going to require a little bit of strategy to do well. You've got 16 or 15 animals all laid out in a grid, and each one has a number from 0 to 15, so 16 animals. And you're trying to move the animals around and eat animals that are only a little bit smaller. I think it's 1, 2, or 3 value smaller than whatever animal you're eating with. And the goal is to end up with as few animals left as possible at the end of the game. Glossing over a lot of stuff here, but that's the basic idea. And so it's not super challenging. I would say I win more often than I lose, but I'm definitely enjoying it.
Cool. And that is Food Chain Island?
Mm-hmm.
From Button Shy. We've also been playing a lot more Toriki.
Yeah.
So Toriki is a game from Lucky Duck Games. This is a bunch of kids get stranded on an island, and it very much is a point-and-click adventure in a board game. It uses a lot of the same technology as Chronicles of Crime with regards to QR codes and scanning and things like that, but there's also...
combining stuff.
Yeah, you combine things, you run into puzzles. You have to solve puzzles by combining things, basically.
Mostly, yeah.
And, you have issues that come up. There's little mission cards, and you have to kind of figure out where to go on the board and what items to use to close out those missions and, get other things. So one of the things I really like about this game is that you have a save mechanic. So everybody can move and perform an action, right? And they can do this 3 times per day?
3 times. It's like morning, noon,
like
and afternoon. Yeah.
Like that, right. And then at the end of that, the day is over, and the game will actually prompt you and say, do you want to save? And at that point, you put in where all of your characters are, and there's, bags. You put all your character stuff in bags and things like that. And it's just a really nice and easy way to kind of set things back up if you put it away for a week or 2. And the game itself will actually remind you where everything goes and things like that. So super helpful.
It is helpful, especially because this is a very strongly story-based game. So if you save and walk away from it for more than a day or 2, you may forget what you guys were doing. We definitely ran into a few issues since it's been a couple of weeks since we last had time to play as a family.
Mm-hmm.
But those were just challenges we could overcome as we explored or re-explored some parts of the island.
Yep.
I think we're kind of at the point that this game is actually a little bit easy for our family level, but we're definitely enjoying it. I think it's geared a little younger.
Yeah, I don't think the game is really designed to be super difficult. This is a game where you're really intended to work your way through the story. And there are things that we're not getting. You can kind of tell that there are things that we're not getting that are optional objectives.
Yeah. And
I think the idea of 100%ing this game, so to speak, is the hard mode of it all.
Could be.
If you make a game that is so hard, and we'll talk about a game that was really, really hard in a moment, that it becomes difficult to complete it without help, that can really impact the fun that you have.
Yeah.
Right? And that's absolutely not what they're going for with Toriki. So I think they've done a good job of dialing that in a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
Let's talk about the thing that was really hard. So we talk about escape rooms and escape room boxes and all this stuff on the show all the time. There's a company called Gruzzle that sent us an escape room box to try out. And, it's one of those things where it's a little bit more bespoke, so it's closer to like we had done some of these before where you actually order the box on like Etsy or something like that. These, you would order them from their website, but they're definitely like handcrafted, right? It's not the kind of thing where like an exit box or something, you feel like it's coming from a factory. This is something that definitely has a human touch. And some of the stuff that was in the box are like real life brochures and stuff, which is kind of cool. So this is the one that we did is called The City, and it was a challenge that was kind of wrapped around DC.
Yeah.
And so it had like an actual copy of like the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and something else was in the same book. I don't remember what, but it was, some significant documents, and that gets obviously used in some
puzzles. Yeah.
This thing has like more Sherlock Holmes consulting detective vibes than it does like Exit and Unlock vibes because of kind of these real life items. It was really difficult.
Yeah, it wasn't universally difficult. There were definitely puzzles that we saw and we're like, oh, okay, like, sure, this is what we need to do. But there was more than one puzzle that we just kind of stared at and we're like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The clues were just a little bit obtuse, or you had to pull things together that you had seen several puzzles ago to pull into the current puzzle. And so it just... I wouldn't say that we didn't enjoy it.
Well, I think I enjoyed it more than you did.
It was too much for me.
Okay. Yeah, look, I think the puzzles were very cleverly put together, but I also think that whoever put the puzzles together, like, it would have been really... I don't know how much like play testing they did with unrelated people. Like the puzzles very much felt like these puzzles make sense to the people who made the puzzles, because once you kind of started to understand, by getting a hint or two or something, you're like, okay, I can work this out. I can figure this out. One or two, like, so we've done exit boxes where we've figured out the puzzle, but the puzzle itself was so finicky that it just didn't work, right? And that wasn't the case here.
Right.
They were just difficult puzzles.
Yeah. And the other thing that I noticed is it's fairly rare in most commercial escape room type puzzles to have a puzzle that leads to another puzzle that leads to another puzzle. Like, usually you get sort of the, okay, great job, you got this, now you can move on. There was more than one puzzle in this box that was like, okay, we figured out this part, I still don't know what we're doing. Like, we obviously have figured out a thing, but that just got us to, like, the next level in the same puzzle.
Yeah, and again, like, I don't think any of this was poorly put together. I think it was put together really well, and I think it, is really clever. And there are certain things that, we would have never known what they were if we didn't look them up. Like, there's certain types of ciphers, for example, that were just like, we had to Google, what in the world these things meant and stuff like that. Just to...
And as soon as we did that, I was like, oh, okay, sure, we can do that. And it made sense. But I'm trying to be very careful with my words here. Based on our experience, I think if you or if your family have tried some escape rooms before and kind of just been like, like, they're just not that interesting. It doesn't feel like a challenge. Maybe a real life escape room is good, but these puzzles are just not enough. If you found yourself saying that, you should try these.
Yeah, or again, that's why I called on Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, because it's got a much higher degree of difficulty for these kinds of things. But this is a puzzle. So, okay, one thing I was thinking about was the way that Grand Gamers Guild puts together their holiday hijinks. So one of the things that they do with the holiday hijinks, so they are app assisted, but there's a kind of a reference right? And there's like all like, here's the semaphore flags, and here's, I don't even know, here's Braille symbols or Morse code or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to go into those things like knowing Morse code, right? But
if you can just identify that, like, oh,
this looks like Morse code. Let me go to the reference that came with the game, air quote, came with the game, right? Because it's in the app. That would have been so helpful here. Like, it wouldn't have to say, like, this puzzle uses, the reference on page 6. It doesn't have to do anything like that. And the Holiday Hijinks doesn't do that. But the ability for you to look at something and be like, this is a jumble of letters. It's probably a cipher. Let me go to my bag of tricks. Because we're not professional detectives.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that might have been useful here, but I don't know. Generally speaking, like Anitra said, if you are the kind of person who finds most commercial escape room boxes too simple, or you're really on the higher end of the exit boxes, and that's the only way that you can find enough challenge, then I definitely recommend these. Gruzzle is the name of the company. You can just Google search it. It's Gruzzle. Anitra will put a link in the show notes to the specific one that we played. So thanks to the team over at Gruzzle for sending that over to us. I think I had a little bit more fun than Anitra did. We tried to start this with all the kids, and they just kind of were like, yeah, this isn't happening. Nope. And they all peeled off. Even our 14-year-old, who usually digs into this stuff pretty good, he was like, this is not working for me. So I think this is more of a bunch of adults getting together, being, super clever and smart kind of a thing than it is for a family weight sort of atmosphere. They might have some easier ones on there. I'm really not sure.
On their site, they do have some mini ones that look like they would be easier, just fewer puzzles that you need to go through. And one thing that we found with the one we did, The City, is there was a fair bit of synthesizing things that you had picked up in different places for some of the big puzzles. So
yes,
if you like that idea of like, man, I don't want it to be so linear, I want more of a challenge, and not just that the puzzles are more challenging, but also the pulling stuff together and figuring out what fits and what doesn't. This was really good for that part.
Yeah, I mean, some of the Holiday Hijinks did that too.
The Holiday Hijinks tend to force themselves into doing that because they have so few cards to work with.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was The City. Gruzzle The City, I guess, is what you would call it.
Yep.
Again, pretty fun. I don't think we were prepared for that level of difficulty.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So we'll get some of our smarter friends to come over and they can...
Let's see, what else? Oh, we didn't mention pulling out Five or Findin'.
Yeah, we haven't played this game in forever. This is an old Haba game.
It feels weird to say that. I'm pretty sure our oldest was a teenager when we played it and reviewed it, but that's still like 4 years ago now. So still really enjoyable. We pulled it out just to show our friends at our usual game night. And after playing one round, they dug in immediately. They're like, yeah,
no,
let's
we're doing
play
this again.
it.
We're doing this again. Nope, we're doing it
all the way
again.
through.
Like, okay.
That was a good time.
Yeah, another game we've been playing a fair bit of is HUTAN, the Rainforest. HUTAN, the Rainforest.
Life in the Rainforest.
Life in the Rainforest. I knew it was Rainforest. Some subtitle, the Rainforest is what I had.
Yes.
So this is a really interesting game from the op. It is a game that I played it solo to start because we've been trying to get it out and just haven't had a whole lot of success doing that. And I went over to you and I was like, yeah, you know that Forage Grove series that you really like? This game's going to remind you of those.
And it does.
Mm-hmm. And you've been whooping me at this game.
All one time that we played together.
I mean, and then your solo scores have been way better than mine.
Well, but that was because when I played solo, I used the scenario stuff with they're not encounter cards. I don't know what they are. They're extra goals that give you more points.
Yeah.
Like
the extra goal cards.
That's gonna bump your score by quite a bit.
Yeah. Talk about the game.
So in HUTAN, you are going to draft cards kind of going around the table, and each card lets you place a certain number of specifically colored flowers in your rainforest. Really, your goal is to make groups of connected flowers of the same color. You are allowed to layer flowers of the same color on each other from a previous round. So you can't do it all in one round, but you can take a blue flower that you're putting this time and put it on top of an existing blue flower. If you do that, then you put a tree on, and if you can fill all of the flowers in an area with trees, then the last tree actually becomes an animal. Animals are worth even more points than trees and have an additional benefit of letting you put some more flowers out in the space immediately surrounding the animal. It's one of those, it's a placement puzzle, and you're trying to layer stuff and group stuff together and fit it around in very specific ways. I like that playing this either solo or with other players, that you've got that drafting, so you always have that choice of like, oh, I really like this color, but I think this combination would fit better for me. Or when you're not playing solo, when you're specifically drafting, you're like, oh, I like that card, but I think if I wait, that card will still be around for my second turn. And I think I need to take this card instead because everybody's going to want this one. But you go through all that, and sometimes you end up stuck with, flowers in a color you didn't want or whatever, because nobody else wanted them either.
Right.
It makes for a really interesting puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Much like Calico, there is a whole section at the back of the rulebook that's devoted to scenarios, which are specific setups to start and specific goal cards. And it's like, can you reach at least this score with starting with this setup? And there's also achievements that you can get either playing solo or playing in a group. Having that as sort of an additional goal on top of just playing the game, for me, really piques my interest in continuing to play it more and try different things.
Yeah, I think they really did a good job putting together a lot of replayability in this package. I hate all of the trees, though. They take up so much room in the box. I just wish they were like little tree tokens or something. I just don't feel like they add enough to be worth the hassle of putting them all together, literally taking up a quarter of the box, like all that stuff. That's like my only big downside. I mean, the art is gorgeous, the full color stuff. I love the little wooden tokens for all the animals. Like, all that stuff is wonderful. I just hate these trees.
So far, my feeling on the trees is I don't absolutely love them because some of them tend to come apart when I pull them out of the box.
I mean, I could glue those if you cared that much, but there's so many of them.
I'm thinking about it, but there are so many of them. But I am less annoyed when I think about how that fits with the theme, which is you're building a rainforest. A rainforest is by definition going to be full of trees. Full of trees.
I mean, I know, but still. I don't have a good comeback for that.
All right. Let's just touch on one or two more games real quick. We played some more Adventure Party, and you wrote up a review for that last week.
Mm-hmm.
I really can't recommend this enough for people who like the idea of doing a role-playing game like D&D, but just don't have the time to set up a scenario and have a DM and have everything ready. Adventure Party, you pull everything out of the box and you're playing in 2 minutes, and you can be completely done with your session in half an hour.
I mean, I was just like sitting here thinking about the game, and the tagline from Whose Line Is It Anyway popped into my head. Like, where there's a competition, but the points don't matter kind of thing, right?
Everything is made up and the points don't matter. Yeah,
I mean, that's Adventure Party too. Like, you have all your stats, but your stats don't matter, right? Adventure Party is a deduction game that is hiding behind a fantasy adventure.
Fantasy role-play adventure.
So in this game, there's a scenario card that, you play, and I'm going to shorten this to one scenario for the sake of description. Scenario card, you read the scenario card. Each person takes a turn describing what they do. Then behind a screen, they roll their D20, and depending on what they roll, it's either a smashing success, 20, a success at all, above 10, or some kind of a failure. And so based on the roll, the player describes what actually happened. They describe what they wanted to do, and then they rolled, and now they're describing what actually happens. And then everybody around the table sets their D20 to whatever they think the person rolled.
Yes.
And then everybody reveals, and that's what you score against, is the difference between the actual roll and the guesses of the rolls based on the description as compared to what they wanted to do. And that's the game, right? And the closer you are to those with those guesses, the more points you'll get, the more points the party will get. That's it.
And that's basically it.
That's the game of Adventure Party.
It really encourages everybody to dive in and do that storytelling part of the role play, both coming up with a plan and then talking about how the plan got implemented and it went even better than expected or horribly wrong or somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty tremendous.
Yeah, it's just been really, really enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. All right, Anitra, I think that's enough. I do, however, think that it is the end of the month of May, and so we owe something to our listeners.
I suppose we should do the May monthly report. So, for me, for the month of May, I played 26 unique games. 51 times.
Oh my gosh. I played 13 unique games 24 times.
All right. I mean, does it help if I tell you that I was looking at it, 37% of my plays for the month were at PAX East, so over 2 days.
Yeah, and I know you played a lot of games when you were at PAX East. We talked about that.
I don't think I realized just how many games I played.
Yeah, I played 42% of my games at 4 players. So that's kind of how that all worked out. 20 of the 24 games that I played with you, although I probably missed some. My H-index was 3.
My H-index was also 3.
Disney Lorcana Gateway, Toriki, and Flip 7 all at least 3 times. Lorcana actually 4 times, but Toriki and Flip 7 were 3. And then HUTAN at 2, Another Man's Treasure at 2. Smug Owls and Trio rounding out the games I played more than once.
So my H-index was also 3, but my most played game was Combo, which I played 7 times.
Okay.
And then Lorcana Gateway at 6 times. And Flip 7, less.
Anything else you played at least 3 times?
Yes, I also played Patchwork and Food Chain Island 3 times each.
Cool. So that's our bleak May monthly report.
It's fine.
Oh, it's terrible.
Even yours is not bleak.
It's terrible.
The fact that nearly half of your games were at 4 players shows that you're just mostly only making time for like game night as a family or game night with our game night group and not a lot of time outside of that. It's okay. It happens.
That's true. All right. What do you want to do next? Do you want to welcome new community members? Do you want to take a break? What do you want to do?
Why don't we welcome our community members?
All right. Just a couple this time around. We have, I think, actually 3 of them. Yep. So I will get us started by saying welcome to Vittorio.
Welcome to Charlie.
And welcome to the Kezi family.
We are glad you're here. And hope that you'll tell us about the games you've been playing with your families.
And don't play Jenga with cats.
Yeah. Cats are vicious.
That's all I got. Well, welcome to the community. Everybody make sure to go over there and say hello. And yeah. And now that we've welcomed our community members, let's go do our back talk. Why not? We only had a couple of answers to this one, and they're all on the Discord, thereby proving, I suppose, that Discord is superior.
We asked about conventions. So we said, tell us about your favorite convention memory, or tell us why you don't go to conventions.
Yep.
Peter Schott tells us why he rarely goes to conventions, and it's because he's the only one really interested in his family, and he doesn't want to leave his family behind. I think that's perfectly valid. We're all in seasons of life where various things happen, right?
Yep. He did say that he got to go to a couple of local geek game days down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which are cheaper, scaled back, smaller conventions. He took his youngest with him to the first one they attended, which was at a church that did an amazing job hosting, but they could only go for 1 day. That was moved to a smaller convention center the next year and concentrated much more on gaming, to the chagrin of his younger one. BGG Spring is 10 miles from Peter at times, but he just can't justify going down on Memorial Day weekend without his family.
I get that.
Yeah, makes sense.
We are missing our favorite board game convention for the 2nd year in a row this year because it's a really bad weekend for our family.
Yep.
And so it is what it is.
Yep. Adrian says, my favorite con memory is Dice Tower West 2020, right as the pandemic was hitting. Though that's not the reason, but it was my last big public event for a whole year. Both my brother and sister were able to attend, and we could just check games out of the library and sit down and play. It is so much more fun when you don't have to scan the room looking for games needing players. It was the most recent time our schedules aligned so we could all be there. Yeah, I think we
get that.
Talked about that, or maybe I referenced it at the beginning of the Adventure Party review, how difficult it is to get together to play games. So I completely understand that it was 5 years ago that your schedules aligned so you could do something like that. So sorry, and I get it.
And I hope for your sake that you will be able to come together again and do that soon. All right, let's take a break.
Sure.
We will play the Flip 7 review for the listeners. And when we come back, we'll talk about Room to Grow with Classic Abstract Game.
All right, we'll be right back. Anitra. Hit me. You were waiting for that, weren't you?
Maybe.
Well, that's not what I meant. I actually meant more like blackjack.
Or something else.
Or like something else.
This is a snap review for Flip 7.
Flip 7 is a family card game designed by Eric Olson and published by The Op. The box says it's for ages 8 and up since there's a little bit of math, and it's for 3 or more players.
How many more? As many as you want. The rules suggest you'll probably want to add another copy of the game if you're playing with more than 18 people.
All right, that's a lot of people. What are they going to see when they open this box?
As with most games that are just numbers on cards, there's not a ton of noticeable art here, but what there is effective. Each number card is just a single number in numerals and in English, in a font that takes up most of the card space. There's a border and a bit of color decoration, which make it prettier without getting distracting.
You need to know this is a special deck of cards. There are 12 12s, 11 11s, and so on, all the way down to a single 1 card and a single 0 card.
There are also modifier cards. These all have an orange background and a smaller font, so it's easy to distinguish them from the number cards.
And there are 3 types of special action cards. These also have a solid color background and both text and symbols to remind you what they do.
Speaking of what the cards do, let's talk about how to play.
Your goal in Flip 7 is to be the first player to score 200 points, but you cannot do that in a single round. Each round you'll score points based on the cards in front of you, but you'll bust and get 0 points for the round if you have 2 cards with the same number.
Let's walk through what a typical round looks like. The dealer gives out a face-up card to each player. Most of the time, these will be number cards. Once everyone has a card, the dealer goes around again, and each player will state whether they want to get another card or keep what they already have.
Anitra here asks for another card and gets a +6 modifier. This will add to her total if she doesn't bust. It's also a modifier, so it doesn't count as a unique number.
Claire asks for another card and gets a 2. Now she has 2 numbers.
Asher asks for another card and gets a 10, which he already has, so he busts out of the round.
Andrew gets a freeze card, which he can choose to play on anyone who is still in the round. And he plays it on Anitra, holding her to 17 points this round.
Claire chooses to keep going and gets a second chance card. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Asher already busted, so Andrew is next, and he draws a Flip 3. This forces a player to take the next 3 cards off the deck, stopping only if they bust. Andrew can use this on any player who has not stopped yet this round, and he chooses to use it on himself.
It works out this time, and now I have 4 numbers totaling 27 points.
Let's get back to that second chance card that Claire has. After a few more turns, she draws a 7, which she already has. The second chance protects her from busting now. She just discards it along with the 7 card she just drew. Meanwhile, Andrew has drawn a 0, which does not give him any more points. Then, on his next turn, he draws a 10. He now has 7 number cards, a Flip 7. This gives him 15 bonus points and immediately ends the round for everyone.
Since the round is now over, we total everyone's points. I get 55, 40 for my cards, plus 15 for the Flip 7. Anitra gets just 17, Claire gets 31, and unfortunately for Asher, he gets nothing because he busted.
After scoring, gather up all the cards and put them on the discard pile. Don't shuffle them back into the deck. The dealer passes to the left and starts dealing off the top of the deck again. Keep dealing and letting players make decisions whether to stay and keep their points, or ask for another card and risk busting. When the deck does run out, shuffle up the discard pile and keep playing.
Check at the end of every round to see if any player has passed 200 points. If so, the game is over and the player with the most points wins. So Anitra, what did we expect from Flip 7?
You told me it was kind of like blackjack, so that's what I expected. That nail-biting moment when you have to decide whether to risk it big with another card or stay safe with what you already have.
So many people had been talking about Flip 7 being one of their favorite new party games, so I expected a party game. Easy to learn, easy to teach, big whoa moments, things like that. But there were some surprises for us, so what surprised you?
I have 2 main surprises. The first is how good this game is at drawing everyone in. We've only played with groups of up to 7 people.
Only?
But I can see it getting bigger than that because everyone is watching to see who busts or who's close to getting 7 unique numbers and ending the round. It's got that crowd appeal that we like in party games. My other surprise is not so great. The official rules for the game are really rigid when it comes to the special cards. If you're dealt one of these freezes as your first card, you have to immediately resolve it by playing it on someone. This prevents them from being able to participate in that round at all and can really suck the fun out of a game quickly. We ended up making a house rule that any freezes dealt as someone's first card just get thrown in the discard pile.
Personally, I was actually surprised at just how much even our kids loved playing this game. It's a really good reminder of the enduring qualities of a single deck of cards. You don't need amazing art or complex mechanics to make a game good, even though I like those things. But Flip 7 is an excellent reminder of that. The op has lots of experience making incredibly thematic games, but here they winnowed the formula down to something basic and classic, and it just works.
We absolutely recommend Flip 7 for families.
Our youngest is a legend in our family for fearlessly pushing his luck in games of zombie dice when he was just 2 years old. Flip 7 probably can't be played well by a 2-year-old, but since the core gameplay loop is really around pattern recognition, just seeing numbers, not even necessarily knowing what they mean,
sure,
you don't need math, and so this game can flex really young. Similarly, anyone who has ever played games with a classic deck of playing cards will kind of understand what's going on in Flip 7 in just a few rounds, so you can get your grandparents involved too.
This is a game that has absolutely zero setup. You pull it out of this little box and start dealing out cards. You can bring it anywhere and start playing in under a minute.
And so with 12 or more players supported out of this box, this tiny package is a whole lot of fun, no matter the age or the mix of ages. And so we're going to give Flip 7 5 cards out of 5.
That's Flip 7 in a snap. And we're back.
So this week we are going to talk about Room to Grow classic abstract games. So we talked about this a little bit at the top of the show. These are games that you've almost certainly heard of, but I suspect they've been relegated to the back corners of your closets because all of these new, beautiful, well-illustrated, fancy-themed games have come out. And let's face it, for a lot of people, they're way more interesting.
So I say this as someone who really likes abstract games. I like the kind of game where the only theme exists in the players' heads. But even I tend to ignore the old abstract games because they're not new and shiny.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, on our breakfast date this week, we played an abstract game. We played a game of Lorcana, which has an incredibly loose theme on it, but really it's just an abstract. And we've talked a lot about the Gigamake abstract games and some other games that are newer that are abstracts. And
we'll talk more about those next time.
Yeah, we will. We certainly will. And every single time one of these kinds of games comes out, you'll hear language around the new classic or, stuff like this. So there's certainly still a recognition that there's something a little bit more timeless about an abstract game. And yet we seem to have forgotten largely the ones that really got all this stuff started.
So let's back up slightly and talk about what we aim to do with our Room to Grow series.
Yes, absolutely.
And more explicitly define what an abstract game is.
Yeah, so an abstract game is basically a game that has no real theme to it, or a theme that really only exists in the player's head. So I mentioned Lorcana. Technically, the theme of this game is that you are trying to trek across the beach without stepping on turtles. But really, it's just an abstract game.
Yeah, the turtles are the only thing that aren't just completely abstract, and they could be anything else, any kind of barrier.
Right. And we've talked about games like Corridor or Deblockle or, I don't know, Boop.
Boop treads the line between abstract and thematic because your kittens booping each other off the bed. You don't really need to be kittens, but in that case, the theme does elevate it a little bit from the abstract gameplay.
I mean, there's a blanket in the box.
Yeah.
But yeah, so abstract games typically will have perfect information. There's nothing hidden. There's often no cards. There's no secret strategies, things like that. There's usually very little luck. It's a skill game, right? It's a strategy style of game. Typically, abstract games don't use dice or things like that. Although there's games like backgammon, which would qualify as an abstract, which does.
Yeah, so this is a little bit fuzzy of a border. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily games with absolutely no luck, but it's games where if there is luck, it's a very small part. So, for example, Can't Stop is a fantastic game, but I would not call it an abstract game in this sense, because the whole idea of the game is just working through luck. Do I want to go further? Am I going to bust? It's an awesome game.
I mean, I think Can't Stop is an abstract game. It has no theme to it. I just think that it's not an abstract strategy game.
Sure.
Anyway, obviously there's a little bit of room for conversation in the definition of an abstract game. And I think, when we've talked about mechanics and stuff in the past, when we've sought to define some mechanics, I think we found a little bit of the same thing.
Yeah. So our goal with Room to Grow is normally to bring your kids or your family through a series of games that grow in complexity. And we'll normally take a beginner game, an intermediate game, and an advanced game. And usually some honorable mentions because we can't always decide.
But deciding is hard.
But we do this to offer up a plan for growth. Start with something simple and get comfortable with a type of mechanic or a family of games.
Mm-hmm. So the question, I guess, Anitra, is why play old games? We've talked a little bit about this already, but why play old games?
So yeah, when we started talking about abstract games, we couldn't decide, do we want to include this kind or not? And that's when we decided that we were going to make this a 2-part episode. Mm-hmm. Because there is a distinct advantage to old abstract games that is not always there with newer ones. Lots of people know them. You're not going to have to be teaching the grandparents necessarily how to play this game.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the kind of meme that goes around that it's like, okay, it's game night, everybody sit down, and someone's going to explain the rules to you, right? You don't have to do that with a lot of these older abstracts.
Right. And we mentioned this in our Flip 7 review. There are certainly new games that you can learn in 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. But the thing about classic abstract games is usually they're fairly simple to learn, and everybody already knows the rules anyway. Mm-hmm. Off of that, they tend to be simple to learn, even if the strategy is not simple.
Yeah, this is the whole simple to learn, lifetime to master kind of paradigm.
Yeah, well, and with these classic abstract games, they've been around for a long time for a reason. Kind of the rough edges have been sanded off, and you really do have a simple core rule set for most of these games.
Yeah.
The last thing is, these old abstract games can be played with the equipment that you have at hand. You don't need to go out and buy a fancy board, fancy pieces. Those are nice. I mean, we have a really nice chessboard. I like it. But you don't need that. Mm-hmm. Think of all the times that you've seen just a checkerboard someplace and some amount of tokens. It might not even be the right number to play checkers. I still know a bunch of games that can be played with that. Don't you?
Yeah, I do. I also know plenty of chess sets that are missing a pawn, but I digress.
Yeah. All of these advantages, you can play them with whatever you have. They're easy to learn if you don't already know the rules, but lots of people already do know the rules.
Right. Which is very, very helpful.
So let's talk about introducing your kids to the classics.
All right. So the first one is a game that you have played anywhere. You have played it to procrastinate. You've played it in restaurants. You've played it with your parents, and you've probably also played it with your kids.
You are bored of this game.
Yeah. And that is tic-tac-toe.
So, first of all, did you know that tic-tac-toe has other names?
I actually did know that because we're giant board game nerds, but that's fine.
Outside of the United States, it is often called Noughts and Crosses. Mm-hmm. You all know this game. It's extremely simple. It is a very basic abstract game. And the goal is just get 3 of your piece, 3 of your type of thing in a row.
So the thing with tic-tac-toe, right, it's a solved game. So within the second, turn or so, you can figure out whether or not you're going to play to completion or you're going to play to a stalemate. There's a lot of different variations on tic-tac-toe with the typical 3x3 board, with, playing a game of tic-tac-toe inside of each of the squares, which then turns into the full game of tic-tac-toe or things like that. There's a lot of stuff that has kind of gone into the tic-tac-toe space, I'll say, over the last many, many, many years to try to create a little bit more interest in this game. And so since these games are so short, kids can really master it and figure it out, even if they get to the point where they know that it's either a win or a stalemate, just within, a couple of times of playing the game or maybe a half dozen or something like that and a little bit of practice.
But this is a really rewarding game for kids to learn because it's so simple and the games are so short, and they will be learning that strategy and how to look ahead as they play it more and more.
Yeah, with only 9 options on a tic-tac-toe board, it is very, very good for teaching a lot of those basics. We've talked in the past about how to teach your kids how to play board games, and tic-tac-toe is a great way to do that. You learn turn-taking, you learn a little bit of projection, right? Like if it's a 2-player tic-tac-toe game, that means one person's going to go 4 times and one person's going to go 5 times, and that's it.
Yep. So as you mentioned, once your kid has learned tic-tac-toe and you have become bored of it, you can still have that beginner game feeling of it by moving to a slightly more complex variation.
Mm-hmm.
The one you mentioned with the tic-tac-toe boards inside the tic-tac-toe board is called Ultimate Tic-Tac-Toe.
Yep. My favorite tic-tac-toe is, of course, Hollywood Squares.
Of course it is.
Circle gets the square.
But you can do that in a family as well.
Sure.
Add trivia to your tic-tac-toe.
I love it.
Sure.
I love it. I mean, well, if you think about it, like there's a lot of youth activity games that the actual basis of the scoring is essentially a tic-tac-toe board, right? Like there's some like skill shot kind of thing or some race where you have to run across the gym and put a thing and run back or something like that. So there's lots of different ways to make things a little bit more difficult. Another game that is actually a lot like tic-tac-toe really is Connect 4.
Yeah, Connect 4 and other larger board games of X in a row are variations on tic-tac-toe. Personally, growing up, I loved 3D tic-tac-toe.
I don't know this. Tell me what this is.
So this has to be on a 4x4x4 board. You cannot have a central middle space because then it becomes a easily solved game again that whoever goes in the middle space will either win or cause a draw. But 3D tic-tac-toe, we actually had a 3D board thing you could set up with translucent layers.
Of course you did.
But this game also appears in Sid Sackson's Klutz game book, Classic Games. You would just draw out 4x4 boards, with a little bit of sort of a stacking feel. And the idea here is you are trying to get 4 in a row in any direction. So it can be all on one board. It can be spread across all 4 boards, completely vertically, diagonally along an edge on the 4 boards, diagonally through the middle, whatever.
Oh, this is breaking my brain.
This is one where, although you can completely set it up yourself, I would recommend drawing it with a little bit of perspective to make it easier to see what spaces line up if the boards were actually stacked on each other.
Let's say sure. Yeah.
But I did really enjoy this one as a kid, and it's an easy jump from standard tic-tac-toe.
I believe you. I'm thinking 3D chess, right? How do we turn some kind of weird stand thing into a 4x4x4?
Sure.
Tic-tac-toe board. But anyway.
So this is us recommending to you as a parent that if you've got little kids especially, play tic-tac-toe.
It's totally okay, and you can play it anywhere. It's set up as a breeze, and you only need a pen and a piece of paper.
It's true.
But if you want to teach a little bit more strategy, maybe some actual planning, some perspective on what will make a player more successful as they go along in a game, you could teach them this little game we know called checkers.
Yeah, so once again, as an old game, this has an alternate name. It is often called drafts or draughts. I have seen it written out a lot more than I've heard it pronounced.
Sure.
But checkers is still a very simple rule set. However, since you've got a lot more pieces on the board, games are longer than tic-tac-toe, and there's more variation because you have more options all the time.
So one thing I'll say about checkers as a game that everybody knows is that most people play it wrong, which is actually true of a lot of older games. So I would say, parents out there, take a look at the actual rules for checkers, especially the rules around obligate scoring and obligate capture, because most people do not play correctly. But better understanding of the rules will actually help players or help parents or help grandparents or whatever add some handicapping to the game if they want to make it something that can accommodate for different skill levels.
Yeah, and we are big proponents of obvious handicapping.
Yeah.
Not trying to throw the game to your kid, but instead saying, I've played this game a lot, you've only played a little bit, so I'm going to remove some of my pieces from the board before we start.
Yeah,
or something
like that. Right. Or, maybe a parent has to participate in obligate capture and kids don't, or something along those lines.
Yeah,
right?
or you start the kid with a king or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing I'll say about handicapping or playing with house rules with checkers is be very clear before you start what the expectations are.
Yes, especially if you are, air quote, breaking the rules for the purpose of handicapping.
Yes.
It's really, really important to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then, when your kids think they're good enough that they don't need a handicap, then you can crush them.
I will say that I have a lot of memories of playing checkers at my grandparents' house, mostly against my grandfather.
Sure.
And it's another one of those where, like tic-tac-toe, since there are more options, but still relatively few options, it can force your kids into a mindset of needing to look ahead without being overwhelming.
Well, yeah, because, the options for moves are very, very simple, right? And so the idea of looking ahead, there's not a lot of branching paths.
Yeah.
In that. There are some, but not in the way that they
early in the game, there's a lot, but...
Yeah. Right. But still, even those branching paths don't represent different move sets. It's just the same moves by different pieces. So.
Yeah. There are also lots of other games you can play using the basic checkers idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get into all of those now, but if you're getting bored with checkers, look into some of those.
All right, and the last game, the advanced game in our Room to Grow. So we started with tic-tac-toe, we went to checkers, and now we're going to go to the advanced game, which is not going to surprise anyone. It is a significant jump in skill, but it bears a bit of talking about, and that is the game of chess. So chess is way harder to learn than tic-tac-toe, way harder to learn than checkers. There's lots of pieces. All the pieces do different things. They move in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of things that you have to wrap your brain around, but there is probably more support for the game of chess and learning how to play the game of chess than literally any other game that I can think of in the world.
Other than maybe Go.
I don't think so. Think of all of the chess leagues and all of that other kind of stuff that exists. I don't remember a movie/TV series about Go in the same way that we've seen those things about chess.
I think that's coming from a very Western standpoint, but
I really don't think so. Look, I'm not saying that Go isn't a classic, right? It absolutely is a classic.
And we're totally going to talk about it a little bit more in a minute.
But it's not chess.
Yeah. I am not a huge fan of chess personally because it does feel like too much to keep track of when playing it.
Mm-hmm.
But we included it as the advanced option in this list because it's been popular for over 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah. Every few years, there's this new chess mania that seems to come around, and all of a sudden everybody's kids are playing chess and buying chess sets. We're 3D printing chess sets. I don't even know what's happening half the time, but there's always chess-related things going on. And, every once in a while, our youngest will get that kind of chip on his shoulder and be convinced that he can beat dad at chess. That's not happening, not anytime soon. I'm no grandmaster, but, he's 10. Anyway, I think my biggest struggle with chess is when you'd play untimed games of chess and they slow way down as people are basically suffering from analysis paralysis. But it is a great and wonderful and classic game.
Yeah. In this case, I'm going to talk about a couple of ways you can actually dial back the difficulty on chess because checkers to chess is a huge leap.
A huge leap, yeah.
There are tons of resources out there. There's no stress chess and all kinds of online resources for learning. There's also, for people like me, I can appreciate chess, but having to constantly kind of work through all of the branching paths feels like too much. There are chess puzzles, which is sort of gives you an existing setup that would be partway through a game, and then a specific task of how would you capture the queen in 2 moves or less? How would you end this game in 3 moves or less? Whatever. And I think things like that can help people work through a more constrained decision space, right?
Yeah. That's kind of the knock on chess is that there's just so many
much
decisions.
Yeah. if you're playing with kids who really, really want to learn chess, if you're not going to use one of those resources like No Stress Chess or whatever, I would just suggest playing with fewer pieces to start and fewer kinds of pieces.
Mm-hmm.
As they start to master what different pieces do and how to nail pieces down and protect their own stuff, then you can add in more kinds of pieces, like leave out the knights at first. The knights are a herd movement. And then add them in later. Oh, well, this one moves differently, and here's what you can do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, chess is one of those things where you can go into, a hotel room or a play space or somebody's living room, and you might see a chessboard on the table. It is a skill set that really is helpful for conversant gaming, right? It's something that can be a springboard for some socialization because it is so well known. And do you play chess? Oh yeah, let's sit down to a game and those kinds of things. And we talk a lot about how the most important thing in a board game is actually the social experience above the board game. But when you've got a game that's so complicated and you're spending so much time with the strategy and trying to figure out what's going on, it becomes a little bit more difficult to do that. Chess is something that is so ubiquitous that it provides that foundation in a much more palatable, easy, really broadly understood way.
Yeah.
Hmm?
So our recommendations, room to grow with classic abstracts, is tic-tac-toe, checkers, and chess. However, we have a couple of other classic abstract games that we really want to recommend to you.
Of course we do.
We mentioned Go earlier.
Yes.
Go is the quintessential easy to learn, hard to master game.
Yeah. And then there's Othello, which is like the branded basically version of Go. It's not really Go, but it's a lot like Go.
It's similar, yeah.
Yep.
We talked about backgammon earlier. It's not exactly an abstract strategy game because there is a lot more luck with dice throwing.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of kind of edge case rules on backgammon.
I still think it's an abstract game. It's just not an abstract strategy game in the same way.
But like chess, backgammon will reward some careful study of it and really encourages you to look ahead at what could come next.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned before the Klutz Book of Games, and in there is Nine Men's Morris, which I know is a game that you really like.
That is a ancient game. It is probably older than chess and checkers. It's probably not older than Go. But Nine Men's Morris, there are, I think, 16 spaces on the board, maybe slightly less, 12. And each player has 9 pieces. You're putting out one piece at a time, and your goal is to make lines of 3. Anytime you make a line of 3, you get to capture one of your opponent's pieces. It's one of those back your opponent into a corner so they can't make any moves sorts of games. It's incredibly easy to learn, and I highly recommend looking into that if you're moving on from stuff like tic-tac-toe and checkers, but you're not quite ready for something like chess.
I think in general, the Klutz Book of Games is a really nice package to pick up if you can still find it.
Yard sales, eBay.
Yeah, right, exactly. Just because it has so many really nice and interesting abstract games in it. Then there's the book that we just picked up from Ego Griffin.
Yeah, Games of Art. So these are not classic abstracts because they are all invented from the mind of Sid Saxon about 20 years ago or so. But it is a beautiful way to think about abstract games with dry erase boards. Almost all of the games in the book accommodate up to 4 players with 4 different colors of markers. And it really explores that space of what can you do with very limited equipment and simple rule sets.
Super interesting.
All right, well, that's going to move us on to a new Backtalk question for this week.
Sure.
Which is, you, listener, what's your favorite classic abstract game? Maybe it's one we didn't even mention this week. I'm actually going to talk about my favorite for a second, which did not make this list.
Okay, what is it?
My favorite is Mancala.
Okay, sure.
It's another one of those, the rule set is pretty simple, although you need to make sure that you and your opponent agree on the rules before you start, because again, there's lots of house rules. And it just feels nice to move pieces around, your board, or preferably like an egg carton, something with actual cups in it, and then be able to all of a sudden take a bunch because you planned out your move just right.
So for me, I think my favorite is just chess.
Okay.
I think it is. But what I will say is I actually have the most memories of a different game, which is Chinese checkers.
Sure.
with just all the marbles moving in that little star pattern and all that. Like, I have more memories with that game, but I think for me, if I were to pick one that I could carry with me into the future, it would just be chess.
Sure. That makes total sense to me. I definitely, know that I played Chinese checkers a bunch as a kid, but other than remembering the rules, I don't have any memories of it.
Yeah, look, I think when we were kids, I didn't have a lot of money growing up, so it was the game we had.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Really what it boiled down to.
Well, and it has the benefit of allowing for more than 2 players really easily.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so tell us about your favorite classic abstract game and maybe why you love it. Where are the best places to tell us about that, Andrew?
Well, we always take our questions from 2 places. The first one is our Facebook community. You can get there by going to thefamilygamers.com/community or searching for the Family Gamers community on Facebook. We welcomed a couple of new members to the community earlier in the show. Head over there, and Anitra has posted the Backtalk question for this week. And the other place is to go to Discord. You can join the family tabletop community on Discord by going to thefamilygamers.com/Discord, getting an invite there, popping into the community. It's a great place where we talk about all sorts of things. We have a bunch of different content creators in there. And yeah, we share our take on whatever the Backtalk question is. And like Anitra said, this week, what is your favorite classic abstract game?
But there are plenty of other ways you can find us online as well. Mm-hmm. You can find us on all the social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, I think.
Yep.
At Family Gamers AA.
Yep. You can also find us on YouTube at Family Gamers AA or The Family Gamers. Check out all of our Snap reviews. Anytime you hear a Snap review during the break, there is actually a video that goes along with that, and you should definitely check those out. Sometimes the visuals are a lot more helpful. A lot of the times, the visuals are a lot more helpful.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I spend time on that, man.
Of course, you can always email us, Andrew@thefamilygamers.com.
Anitra@thefamilygamers.com.
Please don't forget to subscribe to the show, tell your friends about the show, and leave us a review at Apple Podcast or whatever your podcast subscription source is. You can find us on Amazon Music, TuneIn, Spotify, and YouTube Music.
The Family Gamers is still sponsored by First Move Financial. You should go to firstmovefinancial.com/familygamers. And you can learn how the team at First Move Financial can help you pile up the victory points.
All right. Hey, Anitra, this is the time in the show where people expect us to close out the show, but instead, we're going to make some announcements. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, we should do that.
Yep. There are going to be 2 giveaways that we will announce the winners of on episode 400, which is only 2 episodes away. So the first thing that we're going to give away is a game called Avant-Garde. This is a game from Resonim. We absolutely love this game. We got to play prototypes of this game and talked about them a lot. And then we got our Kickstarter fulfillment of this game and we talked about that a lot too. We reviewed it. A great game. Really, really love it. And the other one is another game that we reviewed that we somehow stumbled on an extra copy of, which is weird. So
it's a long story. Listen to our PAX Unplugged episode.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm going to say thanks to the op for this one. And this is the Avatar: The Last Airbender themed Harry Potter Hogwarts battle game, Aang's Destiny. So there's a little bit of a bigger box. It is working your way through the 7 seasons of the original Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm really excited to eventually play our copy of this game where I will be Appa. That is the agreement. So I don't know what's going to happen in that section where Appa gets kidnapped. I don't know.
I don't know.
Sit around and do nothing, but
apparently there's going to be more characters options as we get into the game.
Yeah. Further. All right. Well, we'll find out. But anyway, if you head over to thefamilygamers.com or look at the show notes for this episode, you will find a link to these 2 contests. We are giving away once again Avatar: The Last Airbender, Aang's Destiny, the deck builder that is using at its core the Harry Potter Hogwarts battle engine, and also a copy of Avant-Garde from Resonim. And we're going to give you guys about a month to enter this contest. We'll announce the winners on episode 400.
Woohoo!
Yeah, we've got some other stuff coming up about episode 400. I think we'll make an announcement about that next show.
So until then, everybody, play games with your kids.